Hi, this is Kira Davis, host of Just Listen to Yourself with Kira Davis. And our podcast is growing so quickly that we've got a great problem. We need a new theme song. So we're asking our listeners and our fans to create a theme song for the show and send it to us. It needs to be at least 30 seconds, but it can be a full-length song because here is the really cool thing. Not only will you have the possibility to win $150, but you also can have the opportunity to have your song released on FCB Records in conjunction with the Orchard at Sony Music. That's right. You'll get a release thanks to Sony Music. Does it get any better than that? If you've got an entry, send it to me right here at JLTY@protonmail.com, JLTY@protonmail.com.
This is the FCB Radio Network, home of the best personalities and where real talk lives. Online at FCBradio.com. FCB.
Hi, everybody. This is Kira Davis. Welcome back to Just Listen to Yourself with Kira Davis. I am your host, obviously. I just said that. I just introduced. This is weird because I'm doing part two, but I'm doing part two of the Georgia voter law extravaganza. Let's call it an extravaganza. We never talk about political legislation in really fun terms, do we? Let's give it a little flash, a little flair. So this is part two of our Georgia voter law extravaganza. And I'm recording it literally on the heels of part one. So forgive me if I sound a little rushed or confused. I'm reintroducing a podcast that I've literally just taken a break for to continue on with. But me and my big fat mouth, I couldn't fit in everything I wanted to say in episode one. So I decided to hold this over for 2 episodes. And I think that this is an important exercise in learning how to go find the information and actually listen to what it says and read what it says instead of depending on the news and our favorite opinion folks, including people like me, to reframe it for us, to frame it for us. Okay. And by the way, I don't want to give you the impression that you're a bad person for letting someone frame your arguments or letting someone frame a story. I think that is just fine. In fact, I think that's natural. As long as you know that's what you're doing and you're aware that there could be some bias here or is some bias, I have no problem with it. It's when people think that they're like, oh, this is absolutely the whole truth, the honest truth, nothing but the truth, and there is no way that this interpretation can be wrong. I think that's where the danger comes in. But absolutely, feel free to read. I mean, I do the same thing with my writers at my day job at Red State. There are some writers on there where if there's an issue that I am confused by, if it's just a lot of legalese that I'm not into, or I don't necessarily understand the law or the constitutional issues surrounding it, I will go to one of these writers and I will see how they have framed it. And they will help me. It helped because I trust those writers, because I know them and I love the way they write and I love their point of view. I trust them to frame it for me in a way that's going to make it understandable and palatable to me. I'm going to be able to process it better. Oh, okay, I get it. This is the angle that this story is coming from. And it adds a bit of enlightenment when you want to go back and read the actual story. Not trying to discourage you from doing that. I think that is absolutely fine. And as I said before, in fact, I think it's natural. So I'm glad that this woman, Esosa Osa, ESOSA _OSA on Twitter, she decided to do a line-by-line kind of, it's 98 pages, but basically a line-by-line breakdown of why the Georgia law is problematic to her. And she quotes the lines in it. I mean, she did this on Twitter, and it's honest to God, right or left, the best breakdown I've seen so far of it. I don't agree with how she's framed it at all, and that's what I'm kind of picking apart here today. But kudos to this woman for putting it together. I sure as heck didn't see any conservative doing this kind of work. So let's continue where we left off. Miss Osa was worried about the power grab, as she titled that section of her tweet thread here. It was a power grab, so we explained that. Now we're at the next part, which she labels this next section, County Election Board takeover provisions. And she's got a bunch of instances of takeovers on here that are problematic for her. No judicial oversight. This removes judicial oversight from the county takeover process. And she adds, Georgia already had a process to deal with low-performing counties, which I can only imagine low-performing in this case means counties that have discrepancies and that kind of stuff. Have a broken pipe in the middle of the night on election night, that kind of stuff. But it required judicial oversight of the state election board, the SEB. The new process replaces judicial oversight with, this is her characterization, again, opaque investigation / takeover powers. So she doesn't like that. Number 19, this allows the SEB to replace the entire county board of elections with a single individual. It allows SEB to use the results of any audit or any investigation from past or present as grounds for removal / suspension of a county board of elections. And this is line 518 that she's quoted here. Let's take a look. The findings of the report of the review board under subsection of this code section or any audit or investigation performed by the state election board may be grounds for removal of one or more local election officials pursuant to code section blah, blah, blah. I'll keep reading on because this is a lot. Her main complaint here is that these people can be investigated and removed from the board. The state election board shall appoint 3 competent persons to serve as members of the performance review board, one of whom shall be an employee of the elections division, the office of the Secretary of State, and 2 of whom shall be local election officials, provided that none of the 3 appointees shall be in a local election official for the county or municipality under review. The Performance Review Board shall issue a written report of its findings to the State Election Board and the Secretary of State and applicable local governing authority, which shall include such evaluations, judgments, and recommendation as it deems appropriate. The local governing authority shall reimburse the members of the Performance Review Board for reasonable expenses incurred in the performance of their duties, including mileage, meals, lodging, and the cost of materials. The findings of the report of the Performance Review Board under subsection C of this code section or of any audit or investigation performed by the State Election Board may be grounds for removal of a local election official. This section is really meaty. I'm struggling to get through it because I don't want to skip it, but it's just a lot. It's less proof in the body of the text than it is just like her kind of backing up, her just kind of saying, I don't like that there is this extra board now that can come in and replace the Secretary of State for oversight. The problem is here is what she doesn't like. Let me break this down as I understand it. And my lawyer friends, please feel free to write in and correct me because this is me having to sort through a lot of legal language that I don't totally have a grasp on. But this seems to be the problem of this section for her in a nutshell, is that this appoints an election board, right? Before it was the Secretary of State that rules over elections, decides elections, just keeps tabs on them, not decides them. Well, maybe, but I guess that's the whole problem, isn't it? But keeps tabs on them, and she doesn't like that one person was replaced by a board, which I said is a good thing because that's a disbursement of power, not a concentration of power. So you should like that. That's a release of power. But the other thing is that this board gets to do is investigate problematic counties. And they get to launch an investigation. And so what she's saying is the way she is reading this section, which is actually pages and pages long. So I just can't read through every point to you. But you can go to the law. I would start at section, what did I start at? I would start at line 518 and move out from there. But what she doesn't like is that the SEB can send people to investigate problematic counties, which is what we saw in Georgia on election night in 2020. Whether or not you think the results were right or wrong, there were a lot of problems, right? There were a lot of oversight problems. There was a lot of fishy stuff going on, just stuff that in any election year you'd want to be investigated, or at least make sure that everything was on the up and up. She doesn't like that. She feels she's framing this as giving one person the power to replace an entire election board, because what's going to happen is this auditor is going to come in, going to audit your problematic county, and if it finds that your election board is corrupt, They're going to suspend you while they work it out, which I guess she's saying essentially puts the SEP, like the representative of the SEB at the head of that election county board, which I could be wrong because maybe I'm just totally misunderstanding this section. Again, listeners, feel free to help me out, which is not at all. I think this is the wrong way to frame it. I don't even think that's what's going on here. What's going on here is that, look, if there's a dirty county and we know that they're having consistent problems election after election, and we see inconsistencies that are red flags, we're going to send a body to investigate it. We're going to send a representative or a couple of representatives to investigate it. And then if we find corruption among your state election board officials, we're going to remove those people. So you'll have to elect new ones. I don't understand. I don't think it, and again, I could be wrong, but I don't see the problem with a state representative going into a county, which is absolutely your right as the state. It's different for the feds. The feds can't come into your state and do this, but a state can go into a county and do this. It happened in Gary a couple times on a couple of different occasions. One was when the city, many times the city has been on the cusp of bankruptcy. I think they eventually did declare bankruptcy. The state had to come in, take over the city's finances and audit the city. Same with the school system. The school system was consistently failing. Finally, the state had to come in, audit the schools, and 3/4 of the public elementary schools lost their official accreditation. It was a mess. But this happens all the time. At the state level, you're allowed to do this in your counties. We see it in Texas, right? Governor Abbott has passed this law that we'll use his mask law, but he's also got one on homelessness where, no tents in the streets. And you can't mandate masks. You can ask people to wear masks. You can suggest people wear masks. You can start a campaign to get as many people to wear masks as possible, but you cannot mandate the masks for use. And Austin said, well, no, screw that. We're going to do whatever we want with the homeless people, and we want to mandate masks. We're going to mandate masks. Well, the state has absolutely the right to come into one of their cities and say, no, absolutely not. We will be bringing a lawsuit, and we will be exercising our state authority to make you follow the state guidelines, the state rules on this, the state law on this. No, you cannot let people sleep in tents on the street. You can't do it. So there's all kinds of cases, and the same with the mask mandate. Abbott said, no, we're going to come in, we're going to prosecute any city that tries to force a mask mandate on its people. Again, you can suggest it, you can ask people, you can strongly suggest it. But you cannot prevent people from going about their day-to-day activities if they choose not to wear a mask. So the state has had to come in and actually sue some municipalities over it. That's all this is. To my understanding, that's all this is. This is the state stepping in and saying, where we see corruption, we're going to investigate it. If we find a problem with your election board, those people will be removed from their positions immediately. Not after the next election where they can cause havoc, before. And then the investigation will run its course, and you'll have to elect a new board. So it's not replacing it. She's framing it as the judgment of one person that all these people are corrupt is replacing the authority of the board, and it's not. You're going to have another state election board. But this one person, this auditor, may determine that your board is corrupt, and so can determine if they go or if they stay or if they go. But it's not like picking who gets to be in charge. It's not like this person comes in and is like, you know what, your county's problematic. Election board, you're gone. I'm in charge now. I'll be making all of your electoral decisions from here on out. From my reading of this, that is not what this says. I could be wrong. So y'all help me out. If I am, correct me. JLTY at protonmail.com. There's another section she took umbrage with in the takeovers section. She says this bill prohibits counties from using their budget to pay for their defense in takeover proceedings. This is line 357. A local government shall not expend any public funds for attorney's fees or expenses of litigation relating to the proceedings initiated pursuant to this code section, except to the extent such fees and expenses are incurred prior to and through the recommendation of the state election board as provided in subsection blah, blah, blah. However, whenever there's a however in a bill or a report, it negates everything that came before it. That nothing in this subsection shall be construed to prohibit an insurance provider from covering attorney's fees or expenses or litigation under an insurance policy. So she's saying this is a bad thing. This is another example of a takeover portion of this bill, that counties can't use their own budget to pay for their defense and takeover proceedings. It is important to note that this is in reference to individuals in the county. So it's not like the SCB is launching an investigation, coming in and investigating the county. The audit is for the officials of the county SEB. Those officials have no right to taxpayer funds to defend themselves, which I think is fine. In fact, I think that's better. That's best, right? Why should somebody who's under a corruption investigation in their job be able to take money from that job to defend themselves when it's the job that's investigating them? You know what I mean? That's just ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. And also, it's a slap in the face to the taxpayers. It's the same thing when it's like a dirty cop, a bad cop. Instead of getting arrested for a crime while he's being investigated, he gets to go home and collect his paycheck. Meanwhile, and he gets an appointed attorney through his union, which is paid for by our taxes. So that doesn't always make sense to people. Here's another example: the rubber room for teachers. The rubber room is infamous. I can't believe that we allow things like rubber rooms to go on in the public school system, and people aren't absolutely outraged by it. But the rubber room is where they send all the teachers who are under investigation, half of them for child molestation. And because the unions have made it so it's nearly impossible to fire a teacher, what a lot of schools will do is they'll just send a teacher to the rubber room. So if you get a teacher, and there are teachers who have been caught red-handed with kids in the rubber rooms. Some of them lose their jobs, but most of them go to rubber rooms. It's easier to stick them there. And you know what they do? They bring their computer or book. They sit in a room. It's a classroom all day, a designated classroom, usually at the district office somewhere. They go there. They go there at the opening of the school day. They sit there and entertain themselves on their reading or doing whatever. And then they leave at the end of the school day, and they still get paid for the full school day. So if you get caught with your hands down a little girl's pants as a fifth grade teacher, the first thing that happens is not jail. The thing that happens is the rubber room. And then you just keep making your paycheck. And some people never get out of that rubber room, and they're just fine with it. And rather, the Catholic Church has done this too, right? Where you just kind of shuffle people around rather than have to deal with it. And that's how this works with the teachers too. They get shuffled around and end up in a rubber room. So there's no reason why the taxpayer should have to pay for the defense of a possibly corrupt official. That's your job to defend yourself as an individual. If you have done nothing wrong, then you can defend yourself. Now, the addendum to this, which was not mentioned in this thread, but I think is very important, the addendum to this is, but if you have insurance, feel free to charge your insurance. And many counties do have insurance for this very kind of thing. And for all different cases, a lot of counties have insurance for police brutality suits, right? So if the family of a victim wins, that payout comes from an insurance payout rather than 100% from the taxpayer. A lot of it, in the end, the taxpayer is paying for all of it because you're paying for the policy and everything. But the idea that it's just some takeover, that's one guy's going to come into the county and be like, you know what? I think you guys are corrupt. And furthermore, you're not going to be able to defend yourself. That's not it at all. It's just saying the taxpayer's not going to pay for your defense, particularly if you're corrupt on taxpayer time, and that's what you're being investigated for. And also feel free to pay for it with insurance. And if we do find corruption, yes, we will remove this state board. But then again, according to this law, it will be up to your legislature to reappoint another board of electors.
Politics are becoming more and more divisive every day. My name is Colin Jackson. I'm the co-host of Not Another Political Podcast, where we reject popular opinions and prioritize solutions over partisan dogma. Download Not Another Political Podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast entertainment today.
So she's got 2 points here. On her list, it's 28 and 29. The SEB, the State Electoral Board, sanctions. It grants SEB power to sanction organizations for sending VBM, vote by mail, applications if voter already received one, and the organization can't prove they used recent SOS data. And is it data or data? No one ever answered me, you guys. Which is it? Is it data or data? Somebody tell me. I say it different every time because I don't know which one it is. Is it like pop or soda? Schedule or schedule? It's the one thing I don't like about the Brits. Schedule. No, it's a schedule. Okay. And number 29, State Election Board sanctions. It grants the SEB power to sanction county BOE, Board of Elections, for not accepting unlimited challenges or not holding challenge hearings within 10 days. Even the way she lays it out doesn't look scary to me, but that I know that she thinks it's scary because the title of this section is New GOP Controlled. Emphasis mine. But it's like to even label it that, New GOP Controlled SEB sanction provisions, which is like, it's not like the GOP. I mean, to describe anything as GOP controlled, like, of course, yes, if the GOP is the majority, then it's GOP controlled. But if the Democrats are the majority, it's Democrat controlled. It's an insidious and sneaky way to start demonizing an entire side of the argument. When you sort of make it seem like there's just one party who's not allowed to be in control, and when they are, it's wrong. It's all wrong. Instead of just this being the cycle of elections. You don't need to describe this as a GOP-controlled thing. Because it's led by the GOP now because that's who's in power, but you have the power to change that. You can change it. You can win an election, and then it'll be Democrat-controlled. You know, it's not like these things are just set in stone for the GOP. And if you say, well, the GOP owns Georgia and it'll never go blue. Well, get out there and rock the vote. Get out the vote. Whatever organization you want to work with, cliche you want to put on it. I live in California. We all go blue. This whole state is Democrat. Republicans don't have a hope in hell here. And it's not unfair. That is the electoral process. I hate it. But because all of our votes are concentrated in 3 cities when most of California is red, so I hate it. But that is the election process. And if someday the GOP manages to get it together here and win an election that, God forbid, flips the assembly, they'll have done that on the backs of the election process. All right, so the first point, 28, it grants the power to sanction organizations for sending vote-by-mail applications if the voter already received one. We have 3 voting adults in this family, and last election cycle we got 5 ballots. When my son didn't turn in his first ballot, they sent another one. Here's the whole section. All persons or entities other than the Secretary of State, election superintendents, Board of Registrars, and absentee ballot clerks that send applications for absentee ballots to electors in a primary election or runoff shall mail such applications only to individuals who have not already requested, received, or voted an absentee ballot in the primary election or runoff. Any such person or entity shall compare its mail distribution list with the most recent information available about which electors have been requested, have been issued, or voted an absentee ballot in the primary election or runoff, and shall remove the names of such electors from its mail distribution list. A person or entity shall not be liable For any violation of this subparagraph, if such person or entity relied upon information made available by the Secretary of State within 5 business days prior to the date of such application's mail, blah, blah, blah. All right. What's wrong with that? Actually, it seems really fair. It's saying that if somebody already has a ballot, you can't mail them another one. I don't understand. I honestly don't understand. Now, if all I read was her summary of it, this grants the SEB the power to sanction organizations for sending vote-by-mail applications. It sounds so nefarious if the voter already received one. I mean, yeah, if the voter already has one, why do you need to send another one? If you can verify that one vote has already been sent to this place, why do you need to send another one? And she makes it sound like it's a nefarious thing, that it has to be based on the SOS data, whatever. And okay, great. Why wouldn't you want it based on like some actual information? Why wouldn't you want it cross-checked with actual information? But also, as I just read to you, this makes the Secretary of State liable for the mistake. So it's not like the person is liable. You're not going to get convicted if you got bad information from the SOS. That'll be on them. That's their fault. You can prove that they gave you faulty information if that's how it goes down. So there are protections even for the people that are sending out the ballots. But I would love to hear a justification of why you think it's okay to send somebody a ballot that already has a ballot, or that is already looked to have been sent a ballot. Because here's the other thing. And we talked about this last episode. About, I don't know why we have this idea that we're supposed to make elections just perfectly comfortable for people. We're supposed to make them free and fair. But the idea that somebody's supposed to come to your house and tie your shoe so that you can get out the door to go vote, that's this mentality that I'm seeing. Because, look, you may be saying to yourself right now, well, Kira, what if they don't get the ballot? All kinds of stuff happens. We know the USPS is like not doing well and hasn't for 50 years. And mail gets lost all the time. Maybe your teenager gets the mail and he throws it out by accident. If you're an engaged voter and you're waiting for your chance to vote and you know you're not going to get to the ballot box, you want your mail-in ballot, you're going to call and get the ballot, right? There's nothing that says you can't do that. You can call the Secretary of State. You can go onto your government's website, your state government's website, look up that number, call and say, hey, I think I should have a mail-in ballot by now. I don't have one. I want to make sure I get it. And then they can do the proper record-keeping process to say, okay, yes, I verify that this is Mr. Smith from Elm Street, and he says he didn't receive a ballot, so I'm going to mark that down, and we'll send him out another one. This is just eliminating the process where another one automatically gets sent out. Why would you want one person possibly have 2 ballots in their name? It doesn't make sense. Unless you think that you need that process to win. Otherwise, win on the merits of your ideas. I just don't see the problem here. Even if I'm trying to think of myself from my old ideological position of being a liberal, it's really hard to do that, right? Once you've come out of it, it's hard to get back in. But I other than just this being something that they can point to be like, yeah, we don't like this. We don't think it's fair. If you're thinking it through, it seems perfectly fair. It seems perfectly logical. I don't understand the problem. If you can get rid of a lot of extra ballots floating around, why wouldn't you? Why can't a person, and if a person doesn't get their mail-in ballot, then why can't they just call or just walk into their county courthouse or email or send a snail mail letter or a fax? Like, this is 2021. There's all kinds of ways for a motivated person to get a hold of another mail-in ballot. Or call your representative's office and ask them, how do I do this? I think I didn't get a mail-in ballot. I mean, I don't have to figure this out for y'all. So many things you can do. It's just silly. She says she doesn't like that this grants the SEB powers to sanction the County Board of Elections for not accepting unlimited challenges or not holding challenge hearings within 10 days. She quotes line 607 and 608. and 693 and 694. So 607 and 608. Well, let's start a little bit ahead back. This is a long section. I'm not going to read it all. So to go back to the beginning of this section, which is section 15, I think we read this last episode. Any elector of a county or municipality may challenge the qualifications of any person applying to register to vote in the county or municipality and may challenge the qualifications of any elector of the county or municipality whose name appears on the list of electors. Such challenges shall be in writing and shall specify distinctly the grounds of the challenge. There shall not be a limit on the number of persons whose qualifications each elector may challenge. And then she quotes 608, failure to comply with the provisions of this code section by the Board of Registrars shall subject that board to sanctions by the state election board. Again, I don't know that I think this all falls under the umbrella of this person being upset about a state election board in the first place, right? Because if you have a state election board, then yeah, why wouldn't you be able to bring challenges again? Like if you're getting 10,000 votes from whatever county in Georgia, if you're getting 10,000 votes that you suspect are dead voters and you want to challenge those votes, obviously to challenge each vote separately, good God, the legal system can't even handle that. So yeah, of course you're going to group votes. You're going to say, okay, look, we've got 10,000 red flag votes out there. We're unsure about them. We would like to have the signatures verified and the addresses verified on them. We're going to do a mass challenge to this group. That's just, what's weird about that? That's just, it seems, is the alternative to only challenge each vote individually? I don't think that this person, this woman is obviously who wrote this thread is very intelligent, right? Because she wrote this thread. So I wouldn't imagine that somebody with the kind of brains that this woman has would think that that is the best alternative considering our current issues with the justice system and how it works. I don't think we want to be adding more red tape to the justice system, but it seems to me that the whole problem here is the state board, is this state elections board that's being created. That's what she doesn't like, but she's framing it here as this board has so much power. They can sanction, if they find a problem, they can say, yeah, they have to have the power to sanction corrupt officials. This is the people, right? These are going back to the point about these being elected officials, not appointed officials. This isn't the Secretary of State that's appointed by the governor who's an interested party in the elections. That's not it at all. These people are culled from the constitutional representatives of the people. So this is a board made up of the people of Georgia, or their representatives who are the people. That can never be it can never be a bad thing to give that type of power to the people and not an unelected official. You're never going to change my mind on this. If you think that this should be an appointed official that does this, then I think you need to read the Constitution of the people by the people. Okay, this is a big one. And she don't like this one. Provisional ballots. This is one of those game changer things here. So on her list, this is point number 30. She says that this bans most out-of-precinct ballots. All right, let's go on. Bans out-of-precinct provisional ballots except for 5 to 7 on election day. These provisional ballots make up the majority of provisionals actually counted because they are self-curing, meaning no more action was required of the voter. Provisional ballots were nearly 70% Democratic in 2020, resulting in a runoff election. And then she goes on to say over 20,000 Georgians, disproportionately black, successfully voted by provisional ballot in the 2020 general 2021 runoff elections. Lines 1899 through 1904. All right, this is section 30. I'll start at 1893. If a person presents himself or herself at a polling place, absentee polling place, or registration office in his or her county of residence in this state for the purpose of casting a ballot in a primary or election, stating a good faith belief that he or she has timely registered to vote in such county of residence in such primary, the person in such primary or election, and the person's name does not appear on the list of registered electors, the person shall be entitled to cast a provisional ballot in his or her county of residence in this state as provided by this code section. If the person presents himself at a polling place in the county in which he or she is registered to vote, but not at the precinct in which he or she is registered to vote, the poll official shall inform the person of the polling location for the precinct where such person is registered to vote. The poll officials shall also inform such person that any vote cast by a provisional ballot in the wrong precinct will not be counted unless it is cast after 5 p.m. and before the regular time for the closing of the polls on the day of the primary election or runoff. Blah, 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 unless this person can do a sworn statement. Okay. We saw, she put it right here, why this is a big problem for her, because 70% in this runoff election, 70% were provisional ballots. I guess if you don't know what a provisional ballot is or why a provisional ballot would be a red flag, okay, I guess it sounds like this might be a problem. We'll see. Georgia Republicans are targeting the way black people vote. They know we do 70% provisional around these parts in Georgia. See how they do it? I mean, maybe you're making a whole lot of assumptions about what's in the mind of a lot of people, but a provisional ballot, you're supposed to vote in your precinct. This is how voting works. This is why you have a polling place. This is why you don't just go to Dodger Stadium. And we don't have like one giant, massive place where you just go cast a vote, where everyone in California can go no matter what. You have to vote where you live because you have other things on the measure there. There are local elections. There are local taxes. There are local measures, things that are only in your county, your municipality. You know, those are things that are important. Your district. You need to be in your voting district to cast the vote. That is the law. Why would you go vote in someone else's precinct? Why should you? Why should you be allowed to do that? That's the question people should be asking. Why? Why do 70% of black people, why did 70% of black votes come from provisional ballots in 2020 for this runoff election? That's a crazy number, and it's not okay. It's not because, well, black people are just too dumb to get to the right precinct. Is that going to be your argument? Is that what you're, well, they just, a lot of black people don't know where their precincts are. I can't think of any other argument for why you would think this is okay, other than, well, black people are just too dumb to get to the right precinct. But even in that, there's no excuse because there's somebody there to tell you. I've done it. I do it all the time. We change precincts all the time here in my little neighborhood in Orange County, California. And I've gone to the wrong place several times. And they, you know what they do? They go, oh, no, your polling place is 3 blocks down there. Or your polling place is the school over there. They send you to the right place. And if it's too late, if you're not going to make it back to your precinct in time, then you may cast a provisional ballot. And only then. And you can only do it after these hours. And you want to know why the hours are set. Because the hours indicate your desperation to get the vote in. You know, if you get up at 6 a.m. on voting day and you go vote in your Georgia precinct or what you think is a precinct, and you go and they say, oh, no, sir, you're not registered to vote in this precinct. Your place to vote is 3 blocks that way and it's open till 8 tonight. You can't say, well, I'm already here. I might as well cast it. You've got plenty of time to go back and do it the right way. If it's after 5, then yeah, like maybe you won't be able to get back in time. Like what that timing indicates is that you've come after work, you're very interested in being involved in this process, and you want to be a part of it. And it's basically, it's helping you with your time management. If you didn't manage your time enough or whatever, for whatever reasons, traffic was bad or your kid got sick and you couldn't make it to the polls before a decent time, and then you went to your wrong one and you're not going to get to another one, then you can do it that way. That 70% of black people cast provisional ballots, that is a process that is ripe for corruption. Because this is what some of the other language we're reading in this bill does, right? It cleans up this process of monitoring different counties and their election process. It cleans it up. It adds oversight. Removes judicial oversight, right? Which is one person who might have biases or maybe worse, be able to be bribed, takes one person out of the process and puts a bunch of people in the process. Provisional ballots are ripe for corruption. You can vote in your own precinct and you can go to another precinct and cast another one, and there's no way for them to tell. There's no way at that moment. There's no way for them to verify that you already voted in your previous precinct before you cast the vote in theirs. So no, it shouldn't be that easy to do. She says she has a problem with the sworn statement. This requires an out-of-precinct voters between 5 and 7 p.m. to sign a sworn statement providing an explicit reason for needing a provisional ballot. Okay, why not? Why shouldn't you have to explain yourself as to why you can't vote in your own precinct, which is where you should be voting because you have very important issues that are going on in that precinct. And then point number 32, she has the SEB review. It requires all sworn statements for out-of-precinct voters to be sent to the SEB for review. Yeah. Why wouldn't it? Yeah. If you're going to go to this, if you're going to go to these lengths to make sure that this provisional ballot is a decent one, you can't cast one until between 5 and 7. You have to swear that you're telling the truth about why you need one. Then why wouldn't you verify it? I feel like this is grasping at straws. And maybe you think, again, maybe you're sitting here listening to me and you're just screaming inside your head going, you don't get it, Kira. But even still, to call this the new Jim Crow, I think we could all agree is a bit over dramatic.
Politics are becoming more and more divisive every day. My name is Colin Jackson. I'm the co-host of Not Another Political Podcast, where we reject popular opinions and prioritize solutions over partisan dogma. Download Not Another Political Podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast entertainment today.
Okay, she's got a section on drop boxes, and I'm gonna quickly summarize this. I'm not gonna read the text from the legislation. We've got to get moving on, but she doesn't like that it significantly restricts the drop off box hours. It restricts drop off box locations. It bans drop boxes from being outside, and it increases the cost of counties because it changes Dropbox security requirement from 24/7 camera surveillance to in-person security. She says these changes will increase the burden on senior and disabled voters. These changes will lead to longer lines given absentee ballots can take days to arrive by mail. These restrictions also increase the chance that a ballot arrives after Election Day. Georgia Republicans have chosen to replace a more secure Dropbox option with a less secure mail option. No, I don't get this, and I guess I disagree. I don't get what she's saying, but I guess I disagree with it because it doesn't make sense to me. The Dropbox, they may have shortened the hours, but they extended the number of days that you can use a drop-off box. But again, I don't find drop-off boxes to be a compelling argument at all. We are lucky we get drop-off boxes, people. I don't think we should have drop-off boxes if you ask me. So I think there's an intelligent argument to be made here that has nothing to do with seniors or disabled people or black people. The idea of having a box outside in the elements where you just drop a vote in and this is assume that no one's going to take it or tamper with it or mess with it just because you think that everyone in America is a great person with no ill intentions. I want to live what life you're living, right? It's funny how no one has any ill intentions until it's something you like or you support. And then you're like, oh, all your intentions are ill. You're sick. Why would we do that? Why is it why would you complain about the cost of guarding the most powerful tool you have as an American, which is your vote? It's not your car. It's not your job. It's not your insurance policy. It's not Obamacare. It's not capital gains taxes or your welfare check. It's not your child's school. That's the most valuable tool you have as an American citizen is your vote. It is priceless. Why wouldn't you put a person there to guard it in person? to make sure nobody else is messing with it. Who could argue with that? Who could say that that is a bad idea, to value a vote so much? People die to get here to have this luxury. Why wouldn't you protect it? I'm trying to stay out of my higher register here, folks. I know it's hard on the ears. It gets hard on the ears, but I get so emotional about our right to vote and how precious it is, and how so many people, in the name of what they say justice, are willing to just leave that vote so vulnerable. I think the idea of ballot boxes is ridiculous. But if you're going to have them, then yeah, absolutely the hours should be limited. And no, you should not be able to vote 30 days before an election. There's a reason why you have an election day. You never know what's going to happen in that 30 days leading up to an election. Everything could change. And you can't get that vote back. There should be one election day, but I don't get to make these rules. So we have ballot boxes. Great, fine. I can deal with that because I'm a mature adult. So I can understand that some states have deemed it, for whatever reasons, okay to do this. Then why is it not okay to secure it? To make sure that that disabled person's vote or that senior's vote is secured? See, the idea, again, she's pulling out this "you need to come tie my shoe" argument, which is, well, if somebody's got to wait in line, then that's oppressive. A line is oppressive. The DMV should be out of business if that's the case. But the idea, well, senior people can't wait and disabled people can't wait. All those people have options. We've just been arguing about all these options as we go through this voter law. You know, provisional ballots, absentee ballots, vote by mail, early voting. These things all still exist. There's no proof that anybody is sitting around waiting in line any longer than they would be on election day if there's more ballot boxes. We do have proof that there are fewer ballot boxes to be corrupted if there are fewer ballot boxes. I don't know why we would be okay with a box being outside. Why shouldn't it be inside? Why shouldn't it be inside? Do you let your kid leave his bike outside? And maybe if you live in a place like this, idyllic Orange County, there's a lot of folks. You're going to get your bike stolen by a homeless person, though, folks. That's how it's starting to work around here, even in my cushy little quaint suburb. The homeless problem is reaching everybody, but I get it. But if you live in certain parts of this country, you're not leaving your bike outside. You are not letting your kid leave his bike outside in the driveway. You're going to be like, no, Tommy, you are taking that bike inside. We will not leave it out for someone to steal. Because you value that bike. You paid for that bike. Tommy enjoys that bike. That bike is important to him. It's an important tool. So you don't leave it outside. Why is it okay to leave your vote outside? That's way more important than Tommy's bike. Tommy can buy another bike, but you can't buy another vote. Not as a citizen. Politicians do it all the time. All right, here's the big one. Vote by mail restrictions. Another thing I don't think we should do. But I'm not in charge. We have a vote by mail system, which is not the same thing as an absentee system. I think all we need is the absentee. We don't need vote by mail. You should vote on the day. I don't understand any of this. You should vote on the day. If you can't make it, you get an absentee ballot. And if you still can't make it, oh well, catch you next time. It's not my job to tie your shoes so you can get out the house to vote. That is a personal editorial. However, let's go to the facts here. She says wants to shorten the request period. So this bill shortens the period to request a ballot by 109 days. I don't need to go look up the language to that. It's in there. Although she did quote the lines 927 through 929. Okay, great. She says over 57,000 Georgians requested a ballot earlier than the new start date of 78 days prior to an election. Shortens the period to request a ballot by 109 days. Okay, what's the big deal? So you only have this amount of time to request a extra ballot or a mail-in ballot. What is the big deal? Use this coupon by April 30th or you'll lose it. I went to the grocery store yesterday, and we have Albertsons here in California, and so it's that monopoly thing that you're probably is at your grocery store too. And you know, every time you go in, they're like, okay, you've got 2 rewards are expiring. If you don't use them by the end of the month, they're gone. Like, what area in life, in business, do we not do this? If you miss this cutoff point, if you can't ace your exam by June 1st, you don't graduate 12th grade. You know, It's not a big deal. It's making voting slightly safer, but certainly this isn't like a sea change unless there is such corruption that one party is depending on getting a lot of extra absentee ballots closer to the date of the election. Unless there's cheating going on, and unless one party or the other depends on cheating to win, this should work the same for everyone. This should work the same for everyone. Just because fewer Republicans use the process than Democrats, it doesn't. Okay, change your mind then. Like, what's the difference between me and you? I choose not to send my votes in by mail. I vote in person. I insist on voting in person. Just more Democrats vote by mail than in person. That's why you can't trust exit polls, folks. On election night, you can never trust them. I lived through George Bush. You can never trust them. What's the difference? Who cares? It's not my problem. It's not your problem. It's not anybody's problem that Republicans choose to go more so choose to go on the day of to vote, and Democrats choose to mail in their ballots. To me, that sounds like a group of people who are more susceptible to having their ballot corrupted. But that's y'all's choice. You could do it the other way too. You could. Do you mean to tell me that the ability to vote is based on your political party? Do Democrats suddenly have like a dearth of seniors and disabled people that Republicans don't have in their party? And that's why Democrats choose more vote by mail? Something fishy here, y'all. I mean, we could dig into that, but that's not what this show is. Make the choice. Make your own choice. If you want to if you go be a Republican, go vote like a Republican and show up at the polls the day of. Or don't. If you have 100 days to request a ballot or 50 days to request a ballot, what's the difference? Honestly, what you're talking about, oh, well, this is a lot of people requested a ballot earlier than, okay, they got to figure out when the new date is and do it then. I don't know what the thing is like no one's allowed to change. No one is supposed to like readjust to the new rules. If Democrats could change the rules of Georgia, they would in a heartbeat. If they could change all of these rules, they would in a heartbeat. And what would they say? You must adjust to the new rules. Why is it just because Republicans are in charge, y'all not supposed to adjust to the new rules? It's the new rule. You had X number of days to vote before, to request a ballot before, and now you have Y number of days. Folks will figure it out. Shortens the request deadline. It shortens the ballot request deadline to 11 days before an election, and a full 5 days earlier than the county supported. Again, all right, then it's up to the voters. Like, get out your vote. Get out the vote, rock the vote, get out there and educate people on how long they have for their ballots. That's the solution to this, not accusing people of bringing in the new Jim Crow because we've shortened the amount of days you can request a mail-in ballot, which is a new phenomenon. The idea that we should be able to just send in a ballot. Here we go. Number 40 adds new voter ID requirements to the application. She says as many as 200,000 Georgians do not have these IDs. This is section 950, lines 951 through 954. Any person applying for an absentee by mail ballot shall make application in writing on the form made available by the SOS. In order to confirm the identity of the voter, such form shall require the elector to provide his or her name, date of birth, address as registered, address where the elector wishes the ballot to be mailed, and the number of his or her Georgia driver's license or ID card issued pursuant to blobbity blobbity blob. It's got to be written in ink, and then just some other like details about check this box, make sure this is signed. Starting at line 14. 64. If the elector does not have a Georgia driver's license, identification card issued pursuant to Article 5, blah, 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 or a social security number, the elector shall so affirm in the space provided on the outer oath envelope and place a copy of one of the forms of identification set forth in subsection C. Okay, so I read it. It's a lot longer than the lines she outlined here, but basically I found this interesting because it adds a new voter ID requirement to the ballot. She frames it as though it's like there now you don't just need your driver's license. This is her words. Adds new voter ID requirement to the ballot. This doesn't, if you don't have a driver's license, it doesn't just add a driver's license to the mix or a social security number. Now you need a second form of ID, but it's just a sworn affidavit. If you don't have any of these forms of IDs, you can swear out an affidavit. And then later, if the state needs to challenge your vote, they can go back, they can find you, and then they can verify that you are this person, right? Maybe you didn't have your ID that day, or maybe for some reason you're one of 200,000 Georgians that doesn't have an ID. Or do you mean to tell me that 200,000 voting Georgians don't work, make money, pay taxes, go to the bank, go to the library? Do you mean to tell me that? Is that what this is? Because this argument that 200,000 Georgia voters voted without ID, that's a red flag. That's an alarm, folks. 200,000 people without an ID? Y'all got bigger problems than this silly little voting election integrity stuff. Y'all got bigger problems than this election integrity stuff. If you have 200,000 people in Georgia that don't have IDs, maybe you need to start a website, an activist website that helps people get IDs instead of trying to roll back the voting system to accommodate people that for some strange reason in 2021 do not have any form of ID, and you want that person to vote? You can't even get a freaking ID and I'm supposed to let you vote? Give me a break. Just think about it for 5 seconds. That's all. Just think about it. 200,000 people without an ID is not a civil rights problem. That's an idiocy problem. Or if it's not, prove it to me and go out there and tell me why. Why do 200,000 voters not have ID? And then you need to start electing officials who can help those 100,000 people get ID. Because, oh my gosh, now you've got 200,000 people in Georgia that don't have access to any other services. How do you get government services without an ID? How do you get into the hospital? How do you cash your check? How do you go to the library? How do you get into a bar? How do you buy liquor at Costco? How do you do any freaking thing? How do you pick up your prescription at the pharmacy? This is not an argument that is making your case. This makes your case look stupid. So I don't even know if that number is true, 200,000. But if it is, it's not a compelling argument to me to relax voter ID requirements. It's a compelling argument to me that you guys in Georgia done effed up. It makes requesting ballots harder. It repeals a law requiring a ballot to be mailed to unregistered eligible voters. We talked about this, right? If you've already mailed a voting packet, you get one shot at it. And if the person didn't get it, then they can call their representative or their Secretary of State or hell, 911 and ask, where do I request another ballot? I didn't get my first one in the mail and I'm worried. We've already been through that. Runoff restrictions. It shortens the runoff period from 9 weeks to 4 weeks or 28 days, likely eliminating vote-by-mail options for runoff elections. You should absolutely not vote by mail in a runoff election. A runoff election should happen like that. It was already close. If people are motivated and they want to get in and they want to figure this out, they'll figure out a way to get to the ballot box. I don't see how shortening the time is a problem unless you are depending on your votes being manipulated. Right? Otherwise, all this is doing is shortening the time that these votes change hands and this mail-in process goes on. It's just shortening the opportunity for corruption. It's shortening the opportunity for Republicans to corrupt the process by handling a lot of mail-in ballots and changing the chain of custody and and doing whatever shady stuff they might do. Or Democrats, you know. I mean, you can look at it from both sides. You should be worried about you should always be worried about the other side taking advantage of these holes in this law to corrupt the process. If you're going to streamline voting, that can only be a good thing. Your ancestors had 1 day to vote. It just seems so arrogantly decadent to be arguing over whether or not we can have 30 days to vote or 60 days to vote. Our ancestors had 1 day to vote.
Politics are becoming more and more divisive every day. My name is Colin Jackson. I'm the co-host of Not Another Political Podcast, where we reject popular opinions and prioritize solutions over partisan dogma. Download Not Another Political Podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast entertainment today.
No new registration. It prevents newly eligible voters from voting in runoff elections given registration deadline. So if you don't register to vote by a deadline, then you can't vote in the election. Now, ask yourself why. Why would you even oppose that? Ask yourself why. Are there a bunch of new registrants for the party that you oppose? Are there a whole bunch right before election time? Why would you want somebody to be able to do that? Again, we just talked about how right now there's not the technology, and there shouldn't be, because balloting is a private process. But there's no technology to share information between precincts. So you may have gone to 3 precincts and cast 3 votes before this day. And then in the state of California, you can go and vote that, and you can go and register in another precinct that day and cast yet another vote. And then you can decide whether or not somebody is going to actually follow up on your vote. In a state like California, the answer is most likely no. It reduces the minimum early vote. It reduces early vote mandatory minimum for federal runoffs from 3 weeks to 1 week. Again, maybe you don't like it. Maybe you don't like these time constraints. Maybe you think that it should be longer and not shorter. Okay, fair enough. Jim Crow on steroids? Absolutely not. More bad, she frames this. Georgia's new voting law also bans counties from accepting grant money to fund elections, limits voting resources, and more. No, why would a grant? What is a grant? A grant from who? Who is your government going to take a grant from to fund elections? The government? The only entity that they should be taking a grant from is the government. But they are the government. So who is providing grants to fund elections? Private organizations. And that is an organization that has a vested interest in one party or the other. No, they absolutely should not fund elections. Come on, be serious, people. This one's a no-brainer. That's not liberal or conservative. That is absolutely not left or right. Honest to God, that is not left or right. No private company or charity organization should fund an election in your county. Your government funds the election. You fund the election. You pay taxes all year long. Why would you? You pay taxes all year long for this. Why does your government need a grant from a private organization that now has offered something? And you can say, well, they do it in exchange for nothing. But then I would say, well, I have a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. Real cheap. And the most important one is the count till you drop. It requires 24. I mean, she's listing this as a bad thing. It requires a 24/7 counting of ballots after polls close. She's listing that as a bad thing. A 24/7 counting after. Yes. I didn't even know you could stop until 2020. I remember, I think in 2016, Georgia always, this is part of why Georgia had to do this. And maybe at the end of the day, for all of us, regardless of ideology, this is going to be a blessing in disguise because Georgia had to get their you-know-what together. But Georgia's been effing up. Georgia and Pennsylvania both have been effing up election counts for a long time. It's just that until we saw the interesting thing that we saw in 2020, a president could win without those, because the typical bellwethers of winning an election are pretty much ring true unless there's other stuff going on. Trying to bite my tongue on this is to not drive people away. But if you win Ohio, you win Florida, and you win one other state, I don't know, you're good. Like if you win Ohio and Florida, you're going to win a presidential election. I think there's one example of it happening, a different one or two. But if you win Ohio and Florida, if you run away with Ohio and Florida, you never really need these other states like Pennsylvania and Georgia. That's not what happened in 2020. They became very important, right? Even though the president ran away with with Florida and Ohio. So we had the opportunity for Georgia to be an important state, and then we got to see we shone the light. When sometimes in cop shows they take those black lights to a hotel room and it shows you all kinds of gross stuff in that hotel room. That's the light that's been shone upon this, shined on this data, and we've all got to see that the process is a bit more ugly than we thought, and it does need to be tightened up and cleaned up. And we're sort of arrogant to believe that as Americans we have no more work to do. That our election process shouldn't always be contested and fine-tuned and discussed and talked about and have questions asked about. Because surely our founding fathers never envisioned the challenges that we have today. But that doesn't mean we throw out the baby with the bathwater. We fine-tune what is there to suit our modern needs. And right now, I think we're looking at Georgia. It's a runaway train, and it's some folks that are trying to hit the brakes. And unless you're fine with running people over, I see no problem with pumping the brakes here and tightening up election law. I think in the end, it's going to benefit us all, Republican and Democrat. Republican and Democrat. It shouldn't be that hard to show ID at the polls and cast a vote and go home. I think the overcomplicating of this is a political tactic to make you feel anxious and make things feel vague, so you can't really wrap your mind around things, which makes you more fearful. I won't read the rest of her. She's got a summary of the law, and it's what you think it is. I mean, she's a liberal, she's a Democrat, and she's coming from that point of view. So I'm not going to criticize that, because that's what I would expect from her. Just as I always say to you, I know a lot of you guys are like, Kira's so fair, but she's also conservative. It's like, yeah, I'm a conservative. I'm not going to hide that. I'm a conservative. She is obviously a liberal. So I'm not going to criticize her angst or anger by the way she's framing it. But I do think that it is important to point out that once you go in and you read this text, there are many, 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 many arguments that can be made for why this is just a regular election integrity bill and not the second iteration of Jim Crow. Stop using that. How disrespectful is that? What a disrespectful. I mean, if God bless my father-in-law. These are the times that he lived through. And if I were him and I watched some of y'all saying because you can't give someone a bottle of water in line, or because they can only cast a ballot in their own precinct, that is equivalent to being lynched because some white woman accused you of rape in 1950 when you did nothing. Like, let's just step back. Let's just step back and take a breath and calm down. We can have robust arguments about this. We can. We can talk about, like I said, there's compromises to be made. I don't like ballot boxes. I don't like mail-in voting. I don't think there should be. I think you vote the day of. But I live in a society with 330 million other people. So I have to understand that even though I feel like I have the right idea on this, not everybody's going to agree, and I'm not always going to get my way. And on this, I don't have my way. There's arguments to be had there. This is why you have elections. If you don't like this bill by your Senate, you push hard to win the next election cycle, and then you change it. That's how that works. But this painting an entire group of people as bringing back the second Jim Crow. So that's the basics of the Georgia voting law. I'm I did the best I could. It's been a long day reading a lot of big words, and I hope that I gave you something to at least chew on. And I'm sure, not maybe, I know I didn't quite necessarily explain myself in the clearest of detail. There are a lot of you out there who are lawyers or involved in this process who might be screaming at your device going, Kira, oh my gosh, no, this is what this means. Please feel free to correct me. Contact me at JLTY@protonmail.com. Let me know the truth. Correct me so I can get this right. But I just tried to give you my overall view. And again, you can see there are examples in there of how if you go back and you read the text for yourself, it's innocuous. There's nothing crazy in there at all. And in fact, if you read before the lines that she's highlighting, you'll see, well, they've made all kinds of other provisions for X, Y, and Z. All right, they shortened the hours of the mail-in ballot box that it can be opened, but they lengthened the number of days that you can have a ballot box out, which she failed to mention. Things change when you reframe. And you can reframe by getting more information. If you don't have all the information, I suggest just trying a reframing exercise. In fact, one of our members over at Davis Nation, if you want to have more conversations with me, talk with more people, parse out ideas, head over to davisnation.locals.com. That's our little community there. It's safe. We have a lot of interesting discussions, and we don't judge each other, and people disagree and might even be getting their hairs raised when they disagree, but everyone is like super respectful and treats each other that way. So one of the followers over there had a suggestion. She was like, I know it sounds kind of dumb, but maybe it would be fun. I always think it would be fun if we had like an adult debate club, where we practice debating from the other side of the issue. And I kind of liked it. I was like, yeah, I don't know how logistically I would work that out. If we would pick like a personality to argue the other side, or like just pick someone from the audience, one of the followers or whatever. I don't know. But I think it's an interesting exercise. Try arguing the other side from time to time. Even if it's a sentence or two. In your mind, if something infuriates you, see if you can argue the other side for a minute or two and see if it changes how you frame it. Okay, I've gone on long enough. I mean, look at this, folks. We're going on hours and hours of talking about Georgia voter law. Did you ever think that you would talk so much about a state law? These are interesting times, or boring, depending on how you frame it. But we have come to the end of this subject, and I'm ready to put it down and move on to something else. So before I go, as you guys know by now, we've been looking for a new theme song for JLTY. As the show gets more popular, we're preparing to get hit by copyright. And it's 6 of one, it's half a dozen of the other. Like, I'm mad because I love my song. It's Dua Lipa, by the way. I freaking love that song so much. And everybody loves it. I think it's a great song for the show, but it's not our song. And copyright laws are changing and they're tightening up. It used to be you could get away with sampling a little bit, but it's just better to get away from it. And to be fair to the artist, this is their work. This is the songwriter should get paid for that. All of that stuff. So I'm not shushing copyright laws. As an artist myself, I deeply respect the idea of letting people sell their own work and not stealing it. It's a bummer, but I think that's fair. So before we get hit by any copyright stuff, we've decided to go ahead and solicit our own JLTY theme. And why not open it up to you guys, our favorite people in the world, JLTY listeners, really. So if you're an artist or you know of an artist and you have a great idea for a song for me for this show, send it over to JLTY@protonmail.com. And it can be a full song or a small clip. I suggest a full song because here's the thing. You win not only $150, but your song will get an official release from the Orchard at Sony Records. That's right. The Orchard, in partnership with Sony Records, will release your song officially. So, you should probably have a full-length song. And that, to me, is way more valuable than the cash prize. As I said last episode, you deserve $150,000 for writing this song, but I don't have $150,000. You're going to get $150, And then you'll get this amazing prize, though, of getting an official song release. And you'll have your song played across FCB Records. So this next entry is from Daniel Kavi. Oh, and that reminds me, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, Daniel. But I wanted to say that on the last episode, the song you heard the last episode was from Joseph Willis. I thought about it and I thought, if they're submitting these songs, I like to respect people's privacy. But if you're an artist and you want people to know that this was your song, you're submitting it for hopefully to be heard by thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. So, Joseph, I said last episode that I wasn't going to say your whole name, but I'll say it this time. The last song you heard on the last episode was Joseph Willis, and this week it's from Daniel Kavi. And Daniel, thank you so much for sending your entry in. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate you just being inspired by what we do here. Good luck to you, Daniel. And for those of you who are not songwriters and simply listeners, I will talk to you next time right here on Just Listen to Yourself.
Just listen to yourself. There's no one like you. You may like the words you might have heard, but keep an eye on where you're being led.
The FCB Radio Network. First class broadcasting worldwide.